I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is not really approaching their idea with what is going to make people click. So the title makes a promise saying, hey, if you watch this video, this is what's going to happen, or this is what you're going to learn, or this is what you're going to get out of it. And if you don't start with that promise, like, you're promising something that people want, then they're not going to click. So the easiest way is to just think about, okay, what does my audience want? What promise can I make them that they're going to say, oh my gosh, I have to click this right now. If you do that, then everything is going to be so much easier. Like your average view duration is going to be higher because people actually want to watch the video. So everything starts with the idea. It'll make everything easier if you just come up with a good idea from the start based off of what people want to click, which kind of goes back to the three emotions: fear, curiosity, and desire.
Hey, you're gonna love this interview with Jake Thomas, where we discuss how to use fear, desire, and curiosity to write better YouTube titles. These are really just principles of good copywriting, so it's gonna be broadly applicable, but you'll learn also how he's building a very interesting niche business and how he helps change the trajectory of old videos on a channel. I learned a lot from this conversation. If you have any interest in building your own YouTube channel, you will find this very valuable. Here is Jake Thomas. Jake, thanks for coming on the podcast, man. I'm excited to be talking with you.
Yeah, Aaron, thanks for having me.
So this is really interesting. I think anyone who's spent any time paying attention to business long enough knows the phrase, there's riches in the niches. You've got a relatively distinct niche that you have planted your flag in with creator hooks. Can you just kick things off by telling people this specific expertise that you've cultivated and how you express that as an actual business?
Yeah, so my niche is writing YouTube titles for education and story channels. No gaming channels, no entertainment, no lifestyle channels, just education and story channels. And choosing like a very, very specific niche has been incredible for me. I've been seeing like a lot of good success recently, and I've had a ton of business failures in the past, but just picking one single thing and trying to become the best in the world at it has really attracted like just some crazy people that I never thought that I would be working with. People are asking me for their help, and they've got like 10 million subscribers. When I first just got started, and I was like, "Why are you asking me?" And they're like, "There's nobody else who is focusing on YouTube titles like you are." So yeah, just like picking one small niche and trying to be the best in the world at it has gotten me pretty far, and I'm super excited about it.
And in hindsight, as I look back, I wish I had done a better job of niching down when I was starting my business. But like what I've come to the realization when I see a business like yours, I really see it's like this duality of courage and humility. It takes a courage to really hone in on a niche that seems small at first glance, and simultaneously humility to say, hey, I'm not going to be like everything to all people. I need to be a specific solution to a specific type of person, and I'll actually do a better job when I define that more narrowly.
Yeah, so I quit my job last summer, and I told my wife like, "Hey, I'm going to quit and I'm going to focus on writing better YouTube titles." And she was just like, okay, honey, we'll see how it goes." Like she had no idea what to expect. I didn't know what to expect. I definitely didn't expect to be where I'm at now. Doing some consulting, newsletter is growing, and I had my first speaking opportunity last month. So definitely didn't expect that. But you're right, it does take a little bit of courage and just saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and we'll figure out what happens.
So let's talk a little bit tangibly about what impact this can have. So when titles are optimized, what kind of results get driven? What kind of outcomes occur? Because one of the reasons people might shy away from it or not think it's a viable opportunity is they don't realize how big the opportunity on YouTube is, the opportunity for YouTube optimization is. Just paint a little bit of a clear picture of that.
Yeah, so just like one real small tangible example, one of my clients, they have a really they were in the real estate industry, and they had a really busy CEO, but he was really good. So we couldn't really get any of couldn't get him to create any new content. So we were just pulling old content from like podcasts and talks that he's been on. And by just changing the title and coming up with better titles, we doubled or sometimes like 5x'd how many views they were getting on average. So and we didn't do anything special. We didn't do anything with the content. All we tweaked the thumbnails a little bit to have some kind of different copy, some better copy, and all we did was tweak the thumbnails, and we started getting a lot more views. So, the title is one of the first things that people see when they see your channel, especially with educational channels. Like sometimes it's hard to show what you're trying to teach in an image. With an entertainment channel, like you can show some like crazy like story, but with education sometimes like the title is all they have. So if you want people to click, the title is one of the first things that they're going to see, and that's how they're going to decide, yes, I'm going to watch this video, or no, I'm not. So it's a super powerful thing to be able to drive millions of views and hundreds of thousands of dollars just with like 5 to 10 words.
And the two metrics that really matter on YouTube are click through rate and average view duration. Average view duration is basically how YouTube assesses, do people actually like this video? Did they watch into the video, or did they immediately say, this ain't for me, and click away? But before that can even occur, someone has to see from a lineup of tiles on the YouTube dashboard or in their app a couple of videos that might meet their needs, whether that's a recommendation from the feed or a specific search result, and someone has to say, that's the one I want to try, that's the one I want to go for. And the way that we focused more on thumbnails at my company, just to try and stop making some kind of really obvious unforced errors. But the refrain that I kept saying to my team was, this is our movie poster. We were taking either a screenshot from like the middle of the video or not putting that much work into it. And it's like, maybe not these days, but back when, the movies were the place to go, particularly when I was a teenager, like you'd see the next Fast and the Furious movie and it was, Vin Diesel and The Rock covered in baby oil, like ready to blow some car off a mountain or something. And you're like, dang, I got to see that movie. And I know that's more the entertainment genre, you're talking about education, but it's a similar idea where if you aren't investing into one of the first impressions that you can make with this piece of media, you're missing out on a huge opportunity.
Definitely. Yeah. And I'm going to take it kind of one step further. So you said average view duration really matters for YouTube, but so does just like session time. So somebody spending time on someone's channel. So if you're at the end of your video, if you're sending them to another video and, with your end screen saying, hey, watch this video next, if you've got a really good title for that video, if you can explain that video in like one sentence really well, then they're going to click. And so I have kind of like a dog YouTube channel that's kind of like my sandbox channel. And since I've been writing better titles and coming up with better ideas, my end screen click through rate has jumped from 7% to like about 15%, up to like 18% on some of my videos. And that's because I just have a string of great titles. So someone is just going from video to video. People comment on my videos all the time. Man, I just binged your whole channel. I just watched everything, and YouTube loves that. And so that's how you can grow your channel. If every single one of your videos, people really want to watch them.
And so what are some of these actual things folks can do to improve the title of a YouTube video?
The simplest thing is to just think of the three emotions that make people click. So fear, desire, and curiosity. And usually that's curiosity plus fear or curiosity plus desire. If you can only think about kind of those three emotions, and like when you have a title, or even when like you're coming up with an idea, thinking about, all right, calling out to one of these emotions? If I'm not, then maybe you need to kind of redesign your title or come up with a new idea. But the simplest way is just think about those three emotions.
And what about like the actual video production process itself? Where do you're obviously going to have a bias towards the importance of the title. Where should the YouTube title writing portion of the process fall in the overall arc? Because it's also one of those things where if someone's coming to it the first time, they think about the video, they think about the shot that they want, and they might not necessarily yet be thinking about what the title is going to be. That could be like the last thing as you're uploading that you start to write.
Yeah, that's like, I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is not really approaching their idea with what is going to make people click. So the title makes a promise saying, hey, if you watch this video, this is what's going to happen, or this is what you're going to learn, or this is what you're going to get out of it. And if you don't start with that promise, like that, you're promising something that people want, then they're not going to click. So the easiest way is to just think about, okay, what does my audience want? What promise can I make them that they're going to say, oh my gosh, I have to click this right now. If you do that, then everything is going to be so much easier. Like your average view duration is going to be higher because people actually want to watch the video. Um, you're not going to have to say, all right, like and subscribe, because people are going to want to watch your video. They're going to want more of it, so they're going to like and subscribe. If you're selling products, they're going to kind of fall in love with you because it's a great idea. So everything starts with the idea. With a couple of my clients, I do write the title from and the video is already created, and that's a lot harder. So it'll make everything easier if you just come up with a good idea from the start, based off of what people want to click, which kind of goes back to the three emotions: fear, curiosity, and desire.
Is there one of those that's easier or more reliable, or you find yourself falling back to?
Not easier or more reliable. I've found that some of the best titles are fear and curiosity. And if you think about like what is kind of happening like in news and like what's going viral, a lot of it is fear. And like definitely don't want to be a fear monger, definitely don't want to be like clickbaity and all negativity. And a lot of people say like, oh, my channel is all about positivity. I don't want to make this all about fear. But if you're talking about like mistakes and warnings and regrets, those are kind of good ways to use fear without being a fear monger. Like you can talk about, I regret doing this, or, the biggest mistake I made in doing this. You're not putting, you're sharing your mistakes or your regrets. And people are scared of making those mistakes, or they're scared of living a life with regrets. So they're gonna be, oh my gosh, I have to watch this. I gotta see what happens. And we're like biologically prone to watch videos with fear. So like pretend that, you and I are in the Stone Age and we're sitting on our little cave, and I'm like, "Hey Aaron, there's some berries outside. You should go pick them." You might be like, "All right, cool. Yeah, like I'll pick them. Like, maybe it doesn't matter." But you don't really care too much. But if I say, "Hey Aaron, there's a saber-toothed tiger outside," then you know for sure that you're going to listen to me and you're not going to go outside because it's a matter of life or death. So, we've evolved to listen to warnings. So if you give a warning in your title, people are they're gonna want to listen for sure, because we've been taught that for the last 10,000 years or so.
And another way that I think about that, so I agree that you don't want to turn to like the news and if it bleeds, it leads, and all these kind of um, negative expressions of that kind of sentiment. But I think I've thought a lot about in any facet of my life when I'm trying to improve. Sometimes it's how do I, become the greatest or pursue, 99th percentile performance in some area. And sometimes it's how do I just eliminate as many of the mistakes that I'm making as possible. It's not that I'm eating every superfood. It's more I stopped eating cookies late at night or brownies for lunch or something, right? Like that's partially the removal of error as a style of content, which is, hey, here are some things that you can eliminate to live a better life, or maybe you can want to critique that, but that's like kind of a framing where it's still about these things that you can eliminate or get rid of or avoid, and not necessarily be drowning in negativity.
Definitely. Yeah, yeah. It's like it's kind of moving away from pain. And one of my favorite examples is from the YouTube channel Pay It Forward. And when like a new iPhone or a new iOS comes out, they always make videos about settings. And they did a video, iOS 15 settings you should turn off and iOS 15 settings you should turn on. So there's only one word difference. The thumbnails are really similar. iOS 15 settings that you should turn on got like 700,000 views. And that did really well for the channel. They averaged like, I don't know, 100,000 or 200,000 or something. So 700,000 views for iOS 15 settings you should turn on did great. But iOS 15 settings that you should turn off got 7 million views. So, that's like 10 times more. If you're only looking at making money through AdSense, that's 6 million views. So, assuming an RPM of $4, that's like $24,000 for one word. So that's that's a very powerful word. That's just one way of looking at moving towards pain or towards pleasure. So like settings turn on, or moving away from pain, settings that turn off. Moving away from pain often performs better than moving towards pleasure.
So this is a kind of more nuanced point here with YouTube, but one of the things that we'll say to our clients is, YouTube is the world's second largest search engine. And so if you're like paying for SEO, you're thinking about, being a result on Google and you're not thinking about being a result on YouTube, that's kind of, missing just another self-evident realm of marketing. However, the words that might position or create the metadata that suggests a video is a good search result might not necessarily be the same as a title that inspires click-through rate. So when you're working with someone who's kind of trying to feed both of these beasts, so to speak, how do you think about that? The example that you just said of iPhone setting, iOS settings to turn on, iOS settings to turn off, it kind of threads the needle for both of those. But when you have that tension, how are you thinking about managing that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I mean, just talking about search, so I know that like Google prefers like more positivity. And, if you're talking about search here, then yeah, like maybe you do want to go to more positive, a more positive title. So an easy way, or a couple easy ways to rank in search is to talk about beginners. So let's just say that we want to rank for how to start a YouTube channel. So we might say, how to start a YouTube channel for beginners. When you call out beginners, like you're calling out a specific audience, and that's going to kind of encourage people to click and to watch your videos. Like, man, this is for me. I'm starting a YouTube channel, so you can say how to start a YouTube channel for beginners. That also puts like the keyword up front, so people immediately see, okay, this video is about what I want to watch. You can also add a time frame, so like how to start a YouTube channel in 1 hour. So someone might think, man, it's gonna take a long time. I don't really have time to start a YouTube channel right now, but I'm just kind of browsing. But if you have that, in just 1 hour, that's it. It kind of takes away that objection, like, oh, I can start this now, and also feels a little bit more tangible if you have a time frame on it. And then you can also talk about make it timely. So talk about what's happening right now. So YouTube is always changing. So you can say how to start a YouTube channel in 2022. Saying, all right, this is what is happening right now. And if you look for product reviews or like how tos, like technical how tos, usually they'll have the current year at the end of the title. So that just seems to be what either one, people want to click on, or two, YouTube wants to surface first because that's what's working now. So yeah, a couple different ways to rank and search, like we just talked about. Beginner tips, make it timely, so talk usually the current year, or add like a time frame. And you can also kind of combine those. So like how to start a YouTube channel as a complete beginner in 2022, or how to start a YouTube channel in under an hour as a complete beginner, or in under an hour in 2022. So those are a couple different ways to just kind of add a twist to make people want to click. And but you're kind of serving both the person and the search and the search engine by putting the keyword up front.
I love it. This is one of those things where, someone who might be actually spending their time for that specific search, or, just even some, how to change my oil, how to just do some basic functions that YouTube is this amazing educational resource for. It's so, I just love the notion that there's these people who are thinking for hours about the right way to put that bit of copy and are, A/B testing it to figure out what is the optimal way to get that marginal click. But on the flip side, someone is just going the path of least resistance and they're not even maybe consciously processing it. And that's where you're trying to reach them. They're just, hey, that looks like it's the right solution, go, boom. And I'm trying to get my answer to my question. But there's a real business underneath that.
Yeah, and what a couple of things I just mentioned, like time frames, make it timely, or call it beginners. Just think about what is most relevant for your audience. If you're thinking about how to start a YouTube channel, like yes, you are a beginner if you're looking to start a YouTube channel, so you probably should put that in there. If you were saying best how to or best computers for graphic designers, you probably wouldn't say for beginners, because if I'm a graphic designer and I'm looking to spend a couple $1,000s on a new computer, chances are I'm not a beginner. So I might say best computers for graphic designers in 2022. Or even, you can also refute an objection. Best computers for graphic designers under $2,000. So an objection I might have in this case would be, man, I'd love to get a computer that's better for my graphic design career, but I don't want to spend all that much money. So best computers for graphic designers under $2,000 kind of refutes that objection right there and lets you say, oh, like, man, this video is for me. I didn't want to spend a lot, and this video was made specifically for me.
So I want to talk a little bit about this specific skill set that you've built, because another thing I was just reflecting on, like, riches in the niches, why so many people need to hear that, fail to hear it, is, at least I'm speaking mostly from my own experience. I always had this perception that, yeah, there's certain people who can like own some niche because they've been in it for 20 years and they've been, making the same type of horseshoe since they were, teenagers, and they just have it, embedded into their DNA. Or there's people who just have this like braggadocious audacity, and they don't actually have the like capabilities and experience and skill set to back it up, but they just, put on the cap and pretend like it's there. You clearly don't occupy either of those spaces. You've thread the needle between those two. Can you just convey to people how you developed this skill, about how long it took to the point where not just you felt comfortable selling it, that's one piece of it, but you're working for people, you're consulting with people and delivering results?
A couple of things. So one, I worked for a fishing channel. I was the editor in chief there. I wrote like 4,000 titles between blog posts, YouTube titles, and email subject lines in like 2.5 years. So I got a ton of reps in. I started off really, really bad. I actually almost got fired because I was so bad at writing titles, specifically email subject lines. My boss was like, "No one is going to open this email, and our business is going to fail if you don't get better at getting people's attention and getting them to click," which is really what we're talking about here. So yeah, I started off really bad, got 4,000 reps in, I got better, but I really started like really taking my game to the next level when I started my newsletter. And a lot of people talk about building in public, but the newsletter is really about like learning in public. So all the newsletter does is looks at 5 videos that really crushed it for a channel. I'm looking for outliers here. So like, let's say that a channel averages 10,000 views, but like one of their videos got 100,000 views. So boom, that's an outlier. Like, why did it work? So I just looked at 5 every day for like the past year, and really like kind of more than 5, like kind of between newsletter editions. But I really just started learning in public, and I started noticing patterns for what had worked, across all these outliers. And then, kind of combining my reps with studying what has worked, then I really started to get a good understanding of what actually makes people click, and what actually gets people attention. So, I definitely could not have done this, 2 years ago or 1 year ago, when before I started studying this a lot. I look at like 200 YouTube channels a week, just looking at their titles and trying to see outliers and trying to understand why they worked. So yeah, I think learning, and like a lot of people talk about building in public, which I just mentioned, but I don't think a lot of people talking about learning in public. And maybe there's you kind of obviously learn when you build, but just by analyzing what has worked every week, that's helped me get a lot better really fast.
And yeah, so two things jump out to me there. Number one, you were working underneath a boss for 2.5 years that not only had you, by my calculation, doing like 8 titles a day. So that's a really high work rate, with someone with kind of more experience, more perspective, helping you not just kind of flail around in the dark by yourself. And then concurrently, when you learn in public in whatever domain it is, and our most recent guest, Adam Harriton, is a quintessential example of this, where he was doing like nutrition and foraging associated content, where once he started to become an authority where people were paying attention to him learn in public, he had this self-reinforcing thing where he was starting to be compensated for this learning that he was doing, which gives him more time, more capabilities, more resources to learn. And that extends his advantage on the overall market, which is certainly not paying as much attention to his domain as anyone else. So his insights get proportionally more valuable as more time gets on. And that's like one of those things that you don't necessarily experience in the early stages of starting something, and you don't appreciate once you're actually in it. oh, I can really extend a gap here and just be a massive resource to a majority of the folks that I come into contact with. You defined yourself relatively narrowly because you're still only, what is it, a year or so into this specific business, but maybe, 4 or 5 net years into this kind of domain. Imagine what that's going to be in 3, 4, 5 years from now. The broadness with which you're going to feel like you can really impact a YouTube channel that you work with.
Yeah, and then another thing, so TubeBuddy just makes it really easy. They have an A/B testing tool, and at this point, I've run hundreds of A/B tests, and that has really helped me learn. And kind of, like you said, like I have now the resources to run these tests. I got hired by a company to only run these tests. That's all I do for them. So that's helped me learn so much faster. Learn, what actually moves the needle between a new title that makes a difference or a new title that is just kind of the same. So yeah, and then also having access to people who are better than me. Yes, my boss starting out was good, and but now I've been able to reach out or talk to channels that I really look up to, and I've asked them, hey, like, what do you do that that makes you guys different? Because you guys, I love your titles. Like, what's your process? So I've just been able to learn from like people who have been doing this longer for me and are a lot better than me. And that's, like you said, just accelerated my growth.
Can you talk more about the A/B testing? That's like one of those things where there's certain practitioners where that's just like, taking a walk or something that's second nature. And then to an entire other demographic of marketers or aspiring marketers or just business people in general, where they'd love to kind of have that in their toolbox, but they don't necessarily know how to go about doing it in an effective way.
Yeah. So with YouTube and TubeBuddy specifically, so when you first publish a video, YouTube will push it out to all your subscribers and people who have watched your channel recently, and other people who they think might like the video. So you don't want to, at least I don't like to run a test so quickly because you're kind of getting an unfair advantage in the beginning. So if you're running an A/B test when you first publish a video, you're kind of muddying that unfair advantage and you're muddying the A/B test. So I'll wait 5 days or a week. Even I'll even run an A/B test like months after a video is published. And what TubeBuddy does is they change the title every 24 hours. So you run it for 14 days, and you'll see like, all right, this got a higher click through rate, and TubeBuddy will also tell you like the retention and where they got their views, like in search or on the homepage or whatever. So yeah, so just wait a couple days, wait until that kind of initial push is gone, and then if it's doing okay or not doing as well as you thought it would, then test one element at a time. Test either the thumbnail or the title. Don't test them both. As far as like what I've found that like has worked well for A/B tests with TubeBuddy is actually changing the angle of the title. So there are a couple of titles that I've tested where the original title it had a good angle, but it was kind of poorly worded. So I changed the wording a little bit, but it was the same angle. And that usually doesn't bring as much of a change as I thought it would. Here I am coming in. I'm like, all right, I'm good at writing titles. I'm a good copywriter. I feel like I'm a good wordsmith, whatever. Let me word this better. But it turns out, at least so far in my experience, that just changing, like writing better words to kind of say the same thing doesn't always make that big of a difference. Sometimes it might make like a 2 or 5% difference, but the biggest changes really come from a totally different angle. We talked about fear earlier. Usually I'll change like a neutral title to having more fear in there. That'll often do well. And just really trying to think, okay, like, can I have a broader angle? Like, can I have a more, direct and specific angle? Though that's been the biggest game changers for me, or the biggest gains in increasing the click through rate for a title.
So another thing that's just interesting with copywriting in general is to sell this service. There's always the cost-based model for pricing and the value-based model for pricing, right? And that's a consistent issue that I'm sure you're still working through as someone who's relatively young in running this business. How have you thought about positioning that for the clients that you bring on so that they understand and are excited about the value that you provide?
That's a great question. I'm still trying to figure that out. When I first started this, I said I would not be a consultant. I want to have my own products, and I've never like pitched somebody my services. People have come to me and like said, "Hey, you're the only one who specializes in writing YouTube titles. Will you please help us?" And that's been awesome. Kind of like going back to what we talked about earlier, is just being the only one who does one specific thing has really been like this key to my success recently. But yeah, I'm not really sure. I've been kind of going back and forth. Recently, it's been just like kind of like an hourly rate almost, and it's a little tough because there are so many factors that go into what makes a YouTube video successful. Yes, the title, but also like the thumbnail, the actual content, just the channel in general, the actual idea. So yeah, there's so much going into it. So I'm having a little bit of a hard time pricing my services, and I'm actually trying to get out of consulting. I'm trying to create my own products. I'm trying to create like a database, title generator, and then maybe like a little bit of a course.
Would that almost be like a competitor to TubeBuddy, or would it be different?
No, it would be definitely not a competitor to Buddy. I think it'd be different. It's just like it's pretty much like a swipe file. So when I'm writing a title, I just look at what has worked in the past. That's the easiest way for me to like kind of get my mind and like, all right, this is how you write curiosity. This is how you build fear. This is how you position desire. So that kind of gets me in the right mind frame. And you can also just look at like what titles have worked in the past and just like straight up model those, but just add a little twist for your channel. So I think a database of good titles that have worked in the past will save people a bunch of time. Like I said, I look at 200 video or 200 channels a week. If I can just give you this in like 10 minutes a week, I think people will pay for that just because these are proven videos, and I can also point out the reasons why and the patterns of what's working here in the database.
Yeah, it would be really interesting because you may have run across this too, but they'll do interviews with like, Mr. Beast's manager, whose name is escaping me at the moment, or some of these other folks that are like in the creator economy. They spend all their time thinking about YouTube and TikTok and some of these other platforms, and they'll talk about the value that they place on thumbnails and titles because it is one of the like only two metrics that they really care about, and how hard that is to scale, how hard that is to pass off, and how excited they would be to hire someone. So to me, there's almost like there's a couple pathways where a course would be super helpful to someone who's trying to break in there. But if you could almost be the person who like co-signs someone as being skilled with the title, I don't know exactly how that all fits together, but this like, could they take the course, or could you have these like five people that you're training under your tutelage to scale yourself a little bit, and potentially like, oh, this is someone like from the creator hooks universe who's now our title writer, would feel like I would feel at ease. I would feel excited about that. And there's all different ways, whether it's a finder's fee or an agency that you're trying to scale, that could be exhausting as someone who's running an agency. I can tell you that that's not necessarily where I would push you to go. But it's a really interesting problem, right? Because it's like you're selling words, and there's going to be people who do not get the value of that at all. And yet for someone like me, I can tell you the difference from the back end of like, this video with this click-through rate is just changing our inbound, changing the trajectory of our business. And then we have these other ones that are duds, where it's like, I would love to have someone who is like giving more of their brain power to it, because I'm trying to do eight other things. I have a very limited window where I can oversee something like that.
Dude, yeah, we talked about like how like narrow. It's like yes, only YouTube titles, but here we are. We're talking about so many different options of how to monetize this, and it's crazy. Like I was listening to Russell Brunson's podcast this morning, and he was talking about his ooh, now I'm blanking on it. His certification program, and like yeah,
Yeah.
like you just said that you could have like a Creator Hook certification. I was at a kind of a mastermind last week, and I was asking people, hey, like what do you think that I should offer as a product? Should I do a course, or should I do a database and a title generator? And every single hand in the room said, give me a database, do it for me. I don't want to spend the time to learn. I just want to save a lot of time. and just like look at what works, or like plug in some keywords and have something, spit out a couple of ideas for me. So yeah, a ton of different options. And or I could just go like, I have a newsletter closing in on 5,000 subscribers now, so I can start to put ads on there or do affiliate marketing and like just forget about everything, just kind of live the easy life. Definitely not the most profitable, but so many options.
I like the boot camp idea. And maybe I'm just, I don't know, a contrarian for contrarian's sake. But like, if I think about all the people that are trying to run YouTube channels, and they all have like you from 3 years ago. Like, so if your boss was trying to just ramp your education to the max, what if he could have just sent you to the Creator Hooks bootcamp for one day, where you're gonna like be taken through some workshops, like actually hear you talk through this stuff, and then actually get to like experiment with it and maybe like interact with the database. So you're almost like long selling the database, but like having that workshop as like the hand to hand kind of selling and skill building. That would be a really interesting union of the two.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then like that's one of the main drivers of this, was that I was so frustrated that nobody really talks about how to write good titles. Like, what is it that actually gets someone's attention? What is it that actually makes people click? Nobody was talking about that. And my boss, like, he was really good himself, but he couldn't articulate to me how to write a good title. So he couldn't
Yeah.
help me that much. So yeah, that's a huge driver of the newsletter. It's like, hey, this is what makes people click. This is how you get someone's attention. So really just kind of like saving my old self.
In that newsletter, you do the 5 thumbnails, you give them a score. Is there an out, like what is creating that score for the newsletter for each title?
Yeah. Yeah. So I have the hook score, and the hook score is just like a way for us to compare uh, apples to apples. So if we're analyzing a couple YouTube channels, if one YouTube channel has 50,000 subscribers, but another YouTube channel has 500,000 subscribers, of course the channel with 500,000 subscribers, is those videos are going to have more views. Like you would expect that. But if we just look at the average views of, like, say, their last 10 videos, that, and we think about, okay, how much different was one of these videos compared to the average, then you can kind of compare apples to apples there, right? Like it's and there's a bunch of kind of flaws with that as well, but it's so much better than only looking at views or only looking at subscribers. So now we can see, all right, here are a collection of 200 outliers. What are the patterns that make these all outliers? So yeah, so I'm looking at averages, and then trying to figure out what are the outliers, and then I'm kind of listing them all out in the newsletter.
It's really good. I want people to check it out. I've already gotten a ton of value from it, and I'm sure that I will continue to as a loyal subscriber. And it's always a mark of how often do you open the newsletter that you're getting. There's certain ones, whether it's some of the news ones I follow, it's an everyday thing, and yours is up there. I see it. I don't always. I'm not always able to get to it quickly because I want to really like digest it and process it. But it's a really good one for anyone that's focused on YouTube and doing any sort of marketing. So.
Thank you.
Jake, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the pod. If folks want to sign up for the newsletter, learn more about all the things that you're up to and doing, what digital coordinates can we point them towards?
Creatorhooks.com. Go sign up for the newsletter there. You also get a free ebook about the 10 viral video elements. And, I'm also on Twitter, and you can find me there. After you sign up for the newsletter, there'll be a little plug there.
I'm going to link that in the show notes, goingdeeperthere.com/podcast, or in the podcast app. You're probably listening to it right now. But Jake, before we let you go, I would like to give you the mic one final time to issue an actionable personal challenge to the audience.
Yeah. So personal challenge is make what I call a model 100. So a model 100 is when you'll create a spreadsheet, and in that spreadsheet you'll have a channel and their link. And this spreadsheet is going to have channels that you look up to that have the same style of content as you, but are in a different industry. So if you have an educational channel, let's say you're in like a physical therapy educational channel, then you would want to have educational channels in real estate and finance, marketing, biology, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. Uh, Educate channels that have the same style of content but different topic, and just look at those channels, and make sure that they're channels that you look up to. Maybe they're getting more views than you, and they're like a couple of steps ahead of you. They're not, if you have 5,000 subscribers, make sure you're not looking at channels with like 10 million subscribers. Look for channels that have like, 5 to 20 times more subscribers than you. And just look, make that spreadsheet, make the model 100, and look at those channels. Spend some time, every week or whenever you're coming up with ideas, and try to see, all right, what videos are popping off and what made them pop off. Think about that fear, curiosity, and desire, and only look at those couple channels on your model 100, and use that for inspiration, and model those outliers for your channel, and you're going to get much better at writing YouTube titles.
And really anything. So I mentioned thumbnails earlier here, but those are like the two things that matter to get click-through rate. And for us, what we did, which wasn't even like, super niche specific, but we just looked at some of the biggest shows and the biggest channels that we liked. And all of them had way more faces in them, and like no text or 2 words maybe. And then we were looking at our thumbnails and there was like 18 words on a thumbnail. And we're like, why are we doing something that all of the biggest channels aren't doing? Like once again, it's such simple. Just remove the errors, remove the unforced errors that you're making. And we saw a meaningful lift in our click-through rate after doing that. And one of the other things I was going to ask you about is going back to old content and trying to revive it or fix these errors that you made many years ago. We've seen that with a few thumbnails where we made a thumbnail that was god awful and we changed it to something that just didn't suck, candidly, and we saw a little bit of a lift. Do you recommend people doing that with titles, thumbnails generally, or is that maybe spinning your wheels a little bit?
It can definitely work. I've done it successfully for my own little dog channel. I've done it successfully for other channels that I've worked with. But at the same time, I've heard from people that I really respect in YouTube that it has not worked as well for them, so they don't do that as much. So I think it depends on how much time you have, how much is it going to cost. I think it's definitely worth it if you have the resources to do it. And then also just kind of, like, so you said that you changed some of your thumbnails and you saw a meaningful lift. Everything that we talked about today, like even like the Model 100, studying YouTube, fear, desire, and curiosity, that works in everything, not just YouTube. Said I've got a dog blog. I've used those same concepts from YouTube. I've used those in my email subject lines. I've used them for like my like subheads in my blogs, and that has really helped grow my channel. I've even used it like for Twitter threads too. So it's really just studying what works. YouTube makes it super easy for you to study, like, good writing good titles. And then you can just, once you have that skill, you can apply it to anywhere you're creating content online.
Jake, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, sharing your wisdom with us, and sharing your time.
Yeah, Aaron, thank you.
We just went deep with Jake Thomas. Hope everyone out there has a fantastic day.
Hey, thanks for watching to the end of my interview with Jake. If you want to learn more about utilizing digital media to expand your brand, create new business opportunities, then you'll love our past conversation with Eric Jorgensen. He wrote a book about Naval Ravikant, has used that to propel himself to even greater career heights. And we talk about all that and a lot more. Check it out.